we go. Hi, everybody. This is Debbie Hockman. I'm the Arts, Culture, and Education Director here at the David Posnack JCC, coming to you live from the JCC. And we are happy, once again, it's our monthly program with our friends at the Stirling Road Library to present the lovely Lynda Levin and a book discussion. And I just want to give you a couple updates since we last met. Some of you may or may not know, but the library will start doing this program in person. We're going to start it in June, which means that our April and May books will still be online. And then in June, it'll be live and in person with Lynda at the Stirling Road Library. But we also will maintain the same thing as Zoom. We're just finalizing the date. It'll probably be the same week, but we will do that through the summer is what we're thinking. So the same book will be reviewed in person and then on Zoom. And with Lynda at both times, which is the most important part, is that Lynda will be doing both. But just to let you know, importantly, in April, we celebrate Passover. So the date of the April book review is going to be April 26th. Originally, it was April 19th, but when you register now, it'll say April 26th on the JCC website. So just make sure that you register for April 26th. And if you show up April 19th, you won't see us because we won't be doing this. So just
a week ahead, which is good too. Yeah.
And it is a classic, Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you read it in high school, you get to read it again now. And but I'm sure it'll be a lot different this time with Lynda than it was in high school. That's what I'm thinking.
You know what? It's going to be amazing. I think the difference. Remember, we did last year. We did The Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun reading that one again. It was all of a sudden with an adult perspective.
Exactly. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Lynda, who is going to review today's book, which is The Henna Artist.
Perfect. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Lynda.
Okay, so April selection, and in May we're doing a book called Sparks Like Stars by Nadia Hashimi. Has anybody read that one? Got wonderful reviews and people have really enjoyed it. Marilyn, you enjoyed it, right? Good. Okay, great. So our June selection is still to be announced, and we're trying to put together a list of books right now for the summer and also for the summer and for next season. So my thought is that if anybody comes across any books that you enjoy, it would be great to let us know. Of course, we do have certain criteria, so we won't necessarily be doing every book that everyone suggests. We do really research a lot of titles. We are looking at books that, just so you know some of our criteria, we want it to be 4 stars or more on Goodreads. I like to do ones that are other book club selections because obviously those are already books that, people have enjoyed reading. We know it's a good cross section. But most importantly for our group is that it has to have some substance to it. It has to have something to it that we can discuss, not just a wonderful, entertaining book, something that we can sink our teeth into a little bit in terms of character development, themes, that kind of thing. Okay, so just to give you an idea. So if you come across anything, you could let us know. Okay.
Lynda, one thing before you start. I just want to tell everybody I am muting you because of the background noise, because Lynda is going to do a review of the book first. When she actually asks questions, you can unmute yourself and you can speak, or you can use our chat, but you guys are so good at this now that we don't have to necessarily just use the chat. But at this point, if you would stay muted just because of the background noise. And when you do make a comment, which we hope you will be part of the discussion, just when you're done, please remute yourself because that background noise really amplifies on everybody. So with that, I'm gonna mute myself so that you guys can go. Go ahead.
Great. Okay. So let me begin by telling you a little bit about the author. Her name is Alka Joshi. She was born in Rajasthan, India, and she has lived in the United States since she was 9 years old. She has a BA from Stanford. She has an MFA from California College of the Arts. She ran her own advertising and PR agency for 30 years. She wrote all kinds of commercials and marketing copy. And then she always gives her husband credit because he's the one that said to her, you know, you enjoy writing, you're good at it. Why don't you take some writing workshops in the evening? And she started doing that. And then she enrolled in an MFA program. It was sort of a time of the recession. And she says, you know, to her business, she decided to kind of take a hiatus, and she enrolled in a 2-year program for the MFA. She was 51 years old when she started the program, and her instructors were so generous with their praise that she began to feel like there was a possibility that she could actually be a serious writer. It wasn't until her literary agent finally called her and said, hey, guess what? A division of HarperCollins has sent you a really good contract. And that's when she realized that she really had made it as a writer. And this is her first novel. Her second novel is The Secret of Jaipur. Has anybody read that one yet? The second one? Yeah? Did you enjoy that one, Judy? Yeah? Good. Thumbs up on that. Good. And currently she's working on the third book in that trilogy. And she's also working on a screen adaptation of The Henna Artist. In another interview that I saw with her, she talks about she's also working, I thought we'd enjoy this part. She's doing a graphic novel about her mother's life. So I thought that was interesting because we just did a graphic novel. So she's also working on one. There was another interview with the author that I thought that was sort of interesting. She tells the story that while she was doing her MFA, her brother bought her parents a condo in Jaipur. And she went to visit them very often. She went to visit her mother. She took a lot of time while she was doing this MFA program. She was taking time with her mother to drive around India, to visit with her mother's old school in Agra, and she was listening to her mother's stories. Her mother recounted how at one time she had wanted to go to college and become a psychology major, but instead her parents told her, we have arranged a marriage for you. And her mother told her the story that she had seen or met her betrothed one time, and the second time was on the day of their marriage ceremony. Turns out he was a promising young engineer, and he also didn't want to get married yet, but his parents also decreed this was the time, and it was an arranged marriage, and so it happened. Within 4 years, Joshi's parents had 3 children. And 5 years later, the family moved from India to the United States so her father could pursue his doctorate. Joshi says, my mother never had any decision-making powers, and as a result, she gave me a lot of latitude and a lot of freedom. And now I wanted to give that gift back to her. I can't change her life, but I can change it in fiction. I can create a character who leaves her marriage and goes off and finds herself and her destiny and her financial and emotional independence. Joshi likes to tell on her YouTubes that she worked on this book for 10 years, and it went through a lot of editors and it went through a lot of drafts. The sad thing is that she lost her mother about 2 or 3 years after she first started the book. But she did have that special time with her together in Jaipur. And she was able to read portions of the book to her and say, Mom, does this feel real to you? And her mother said, yes, honey, you're onto something. Keep going. And the author says, I just wish she were here with me now so she could see the fruits of my labor and hers. By the way, I'm hoping did you all enjoy reading the notes at the end of the book about henna and the caste system? I found that to be really interesting. I did some additional research on henna and found that to be very interesting too. We'll talk about that as we get into our conversation. What themes did you see? So now here's the thing. We're a nice size group, but I think we can manage it. You can either write in the chat or pretend we're live. You could, I think, say it. Just speak into your microphone. So tell me, what are some of the themes that you saw in this story?
I thought for sure the haves and have-nots.
It was clear to you, the haves, the have-nots, the caste system, very clear, right? In India. Yeah. What else?
Loyalty.
Loyalty. Tremendous loyalty. Where did you see the loyalty?
Well, she actually had a very good relationship with her mother-in-law.
A wonderful relationship with her mother-in-law, right?
But then the whole relationship, she felt, I don't know, with her sister and taking care of her sister.
Right.
And,
You know where else I saw it? Jillian, I saw it with Malik.
Yes.
Remember
Malik.
with her, amazing loyalty. We'll talk about that when we get into our character development part. Yeah, but clearly, what else?
I
Family.
saw a lot of
India
resilience.
was newly independent, and
Pardon, Eva, I can't hear you. Say it again.
India was newly independent when she set this story, and there were a lot of women who were hoping that they would be able to make their own choices in life, and she
That's
put that
right.
into the book.
And yeah, and that was an interesting context that she gave us, that setting of India in the 50s. And we see that struggle throughout in a lot of parts of the story between tradition and modernity, right? India in the 50s. Kathy, you were saying.
Yes, thank you. I saw a lot of resilience in this book.
Tremendous.
She got knocked down so many times and she always got up.
Yeah,
And so did Malik. Malik always got up, you know.
they did. They did. So
Lynda,
did you like her?
Lynda,
Yeah.
we have a couple in the chat also. Stephanie said responsibility, and Marilyn and Sandy said importance of family, and Dora said independence as a worker.
Yeah, for sure.
The role of the woman at that time in history, I mean, she was against all odds.
Yeah.
In India, trying to do everything herself, actually buying a home herself. These things were, I believe, unheard of.
Unheard of and major accomplishments. Absolutely. Did you like the author's style of writing? Were you engrossed by the book? Did you enjoy the book? Did you feel like you were getting a sense of India at that time, of Jaipur at that time?
Yes.
Yes, you nodding yes, yes,
Yes.
yeah.
I'd like
Leslie,
to
you had
say,
something? Yeah.
right. I really enjoyed the book very, very much. Once I started reading it, I couldn't put it down. And I thought her style was excellent. And also, it did give me a feel of, being there. When she described the herbs and the people, the caste, those people that accepted her and those that, eventually didn't. I thought it was fascinating. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the description. Did you like that? The descriptions of the bougainvillea and all the jasmine, and you could almost, had the scent of it around those mansions where these ladies lived that she did her henna on. I love the descriptions of the saris and the jeweled colors and how we learned, the wealthy women wore only silk, and it was the village girls who wore the gaudy colors. And it was kind of interesting, finding out a lot about that kind of thing.
I enjoyed the book.
Yeah.
It's Sandy. I enjoyed the book. It took me a few pages to get into it. I was in India about 10 years ago, and I was in Jaipur, and it really hasn't changed that much. I mean, the bigger cities like New Delhi after the war had all the British influence, so they changed a lot. The descriptions were great, even the train station at the end.
Yeah. So you're leading me right into my next question, Sandy.
And for your next question, I just wanted to say that Stephanie said that she enjoyed it tremendously. It reminded her of the space between us. And Dora, interestingly, said that she read it in Spanish because English was not available, but the translation was good, and she read it in 2 days.
Wow. Okay, great. The author, in terms of the setting, because Sandy started to touch on that, the author begins the book by saying, and I thought this was interesting, something we should think about: independence changed everything. Independence changed nothing. What's she getting at here?
Well, the women were still in the roles that they had been in.
Right.
That certainly didn't change for them.
Right.
The caste system didn't change.
That's right. Right.
And she was
poverty didn't change
on her husband. She was dependent on her
Dora,
husband.
did you have something?
Yes,
go ahead.
She was dependent on her husband when he showed up. She was still married and she couldn't do anything. She had to bribe him for her to be able to have a normal life.
the position of women really didn't really change, right? Since
Right,
then, exactly. Although I guess they had a new law where she was able to get a divorce from him later on. But she
Right.
Yeah.
talks about 8 years
Right.
after the British left, she says, there were free government schools, there was running water and paved roads, but there was so much still the same. The sights and the odors of the city, the cow dung, the cooking fires, the coconut hair oil, the sandalwood, incense, and urine. You know, you're getting this feeling of what is still the same. She says everybody was recovering after World War II, and everywhere, and especially in India, there was that struggle between what was the modern and the traditional. And of course, again, we see that in our story. And Lakshmi is really a good example of the kind of woman we're seeing, where that kind of woman was, I think, as Jane points out, she was more of an oddity in that she was out there building a business and a new type of woman. So she was the subject of curiosity and suspicion and usually gossip among the women. Also, she makes the point exactly what you all brought out, which was, although there were changes, so much remained the same, mostly the position of women, the caste system. I want to give you just a brief summary because I know many of you, most of you have read the book. For those of you that did read it a while ago, a little refresher for the memory, and for the rest of you, those of you that didn't read the book, a little bit of background. But we know that our main character is Lakshmi. She is the central character. And of course, our setting is 1950s pink city of Jaipur, India. Lakshmi has escaped from this abusive marriage. She was forced out of her home when she was 15 years old. Her mother couldn't afford to feed her. She forced her into this arranged marriage. And the only positive thing that came from that marriage, as Jillian points out, is the fact that she had this wonderful mother-in-law who taught her all kinds of healing skills. And she learned the ways in which herbs and tea sachets can assist both men and women in a lot of different ways. Lakshmi makes it by herself now. She's stayed in that marriage for 2 years. She runs off. She's 17. She runs to Agra. She's taken in by some courtesans and she learns the art of henna. And in time, of course, we're going to find out that she becomes one of the most highly requested henna artists. She becomes a confidant to the wealthy women of Jaipur. She's well known for her original henna designs. She gives sage advice. But nonetheless, she has to really tread carefully because she has to avoid the jealous gossips who could ruin her reputation and her livelihood. And of course, in the course of our story, we're going to find out how, in fact, she unfortunately does suffer all of that in terms of ruining her reputation and her livelihood. She works hard. She dreams of one day making amends with her parents. And of course, that's very important to her. At the same time, she's pursuing this dream of success and independence. And of course, as we mentioned, she is now startled. Her ex-husband shows up and he brings with him a young girl, 13 years old, who claims she is now Lakshmi's sister. And it is a sister that she never knew she even had because Radha was 13 years old, born the same year that Lakshmi fled from her husband. So it's a surprise arrival, right? And all of a sudden we see that that really changes a lot of things for Lakshmi. It turns out that her relationship with her new sister, Radha, is very complex. She never knew that Radha even existed. All of a sudden, she's got this sister who has a mind of her own. She's a strong girl. She's had a tough upbringing and she's scarred. She's only 13, but in some ways she's mature beyond her years, but in other ways, incredibly naive. Lakshmi is suddenly thrust in the position of being an older sister, almost a parent figure to Radha, and at the same time, Lakshmi's trying to build this business, keep it afloat. Radha doesn't make things easy for her, and of course, what we come to see is that Radha becomes pregnant, and of course, the baby's father is none other than the son of one of the most prominent families in the town. So you can see where this story is headed. Okay, so we've got our list of characters. We've got Lakshmi, we've got Radha, the sister, we've got Kanta, who's a very good friend, if you remember, of Lakshmi and takes on a lot of the caretaking for Radha. And we've got Samir and we've got Parvati. They're a married couple. Samir has been the one who actually encouraged Lakshmi to move from Agra, to leave her prostitutes behind and come to Jaipur And there she's going to become a well-known henna artist because she's so talented. Of course, we know he's got an ulterior motive. You remember that ulterior motive? What does he want her to do?
Sleep with him.
No, the satchels.
The
for
sachets.
abortion.
She sells those. She's
Correct.
she's able to put together these teas that are actually contraceptive teas or even teas that end pregnancies, right? She knows all of these herbal recipes. Okay, so we've got Samir, and then we've also got Parvati. She's a main character in this, Samir's wife, and she is the one woman who in the end is going to make and then break Lakshmi's success. We've got Malik, who's the street boy who carries all of her products. He arranges for her rickshaws. He turns out in the end, of course, as we said, he's very loyal, turns out to be a true friend and a companion. Okay. We know from the author's interview that she was writing this as a result of her mother's own experience. So she's emphasizing the importance of freedom for women, the freedom to be able to make choices. So in the beginning of the book, what choices does Lakshmi make? What are the choices that she makes in the beginning? Well, I'll start us out. She's 15 and 17 and she leaves her husband. She chooses to leave that guy. What else? What else? You have to unmute, guys. Unmute.
That took a lot of strength to
A
leave her
lot of
husband
strength.
in
bravery,
that
courage.
environment. Unbelievable.
What else? Other
And
choices
then-
she makes.
Well, then she continues to move to another town, thanks to Samir. So
Yes.
she uproots herself, and you see the conflict in her because as much as she runs away, mentally she runs back.
Yes.
She's constantly talking about her parents, and little did she know what they did with the money that she sent them, that she struggled to do so. They were very unforgiving, and
They actually threw away her letters. They never opened them,
that's right.
which is so tragic because they never even realized there was money in them, right?
Money, right.
And they never realized that she was inviting them to come to her home. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it was very sad. Exactly.
Well, I also think that she chose and took a great chance in deciding to really pursue a business with all of these very, very high esteemed women.
Yes.
She had no concept of what their lives were like, really.
She chose to move ahead and do that. Yeah.
Very risky.
Also, talk about risky. What else is risky that she's doing for her business?
Well, she's certainly hanging around Samir. I mean, that's a bit.
Well, Samir, but she's selling the tea
selling
sachets,
the
right?
The
Yeah.
t-shirt that she's making,
That
the
is
tea.
obviously illegal.
Exactly. Right. So,
Linda,
yeah.
do you think those tea sachets really work? 'Cause we certainly
I
could
know.
use them in our country now with all this anti-abortion stuff going on.
Yeah, I noticed that they don't give any real recipes for that, but yeah, who knows? I don't know. Listen, that's an interesting thing, by the way, about Dr. Kumar at the end, when we talk about that piece between modern medicine and the herbal medicine. Remember how she gets into that at the end of the book. Yeah. Right. So we said we've talked about some of her qualities, that she's so brave but the other thing about her that's fascinating, what sets her apart from other women in those days, or maybe now, who knows, but it does set her apart.
Her independence.
Her desire for independence. What else?
She wasn't totally.
decides-
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
She wasn't totally subservient.
She wasn't subservient. Nope.
She was able to use her own voice.
Marilyn?
She was able to use her own voice.
Absolutely.
Most women did not have a voice to use.
That's right.
And,
That's right.
and
What
she
else?
was-
Anything else?
And she was a very strong reader at the time of novels. which
That's
most
right.
women-
I don't know at which point she decides to build a house for herself, but that was quite unusual.
That was
in
so
those
gutsy.
days.
Exactly right. All of that. What I found very interesting is that she made a conscious desire, a conscious effort to not have children, right? She had that abusive marriage. She certainly didn't want children with him, but she really did not want children. She says in there she did not want children. She always wanted a life that could fulfill me in a way that children wouldn't. So she had this other desire, which is a very unusual desire, especially at that time in that place. So we know that she's artistic. And I also was taken with the idea that she was such an astute businesswoman. How do we know that? Well, she built Henna up. She sold her tea things. But what was her goal also? What was another astute business decision she made? Remember that? With Parvati, with the Samir, what?
She negotiated
marriage arrangement.
Matchmaking.
She wants to become a matchmaker. She realizes she's always thinking ahead. Yeah, it's great I'm making money as a henna artist, but what's more lucrative? What's more respectable? I'm going to become a matchmaker. So what does she do? She's trying to arrange a marriage where? With whom?
With Samir's
with
son.
Samir's son, Ravi, and with Sheila. Dharma. Two powerhouse families. She's going to merge them together. It's going to be great for them. It's going to be great for their business opportunity to merge together, right? One's an architect, one's a builder. It's great match. And most of all, she's going to get all kinds of offers to become a matchmaker, and she's going to make a lot of money. So she's really thinking about that. In the meantime, she's a very successful henna artist. Why is it that she's so successful? What is it about her that makes her so requested? What is it about her, Henna?
Well, I think she had a sense of who each person truly was and what their kind of inner workings were and what was important to them. And she knew how to open them up and find things out, and then to paint with the henna in ways that were very, very comforting to them or important to them individually.
She really customized, she really individualized, right? And she was talented in that she knew how to make intricate designs, because remember, she had learned that from all of these, the pleasure women, all of these women that came from Marrakesh and came from Cairo. She learned all of that technique, how to make those designs. But Kathy, you hit on two things there. She individualized their needs, but you also used the word comfort. She gave them such comfort in what she was doing.
I think, sorry, Lynda, sorry.
Yeah,
And I think to follow some from what Kathy said, she was just very intuitive about being able to assess and being sensitive to what their needs were. So.
Right.
Lynda.
Yeah.
And also, she made believe the women that when she did the henna and her feet and everything, it was very pleasurable with her husband. And then she was able, and then they were able to conceive and have a baby. So one of the women said that her baby was due to the things that she did for her.
Right. So Dora, thank you for following up on that, because I want to follow up on what you just said. I love that Parvati is the one, Samir's wife, is the one that gives her great credit in the beginning and says, hey, that's how I conceived my son. And I want to there was something I thought was great. First of all, she would do the henna on their soles of their feet, and who would be the only person who would then see it would be their husband, right? So listen to this. At one point, she goes to Parvati. And by the way, that henna, they say her henna could bring a wayward husband home, or it could coax a baby from a womb. I mean, they thought it was so powerful, her henna. So there's one, I want to just recount this to you. One time she's with Parvati and she paints a large fig leaf. I think it was on her sole of her foot, plump and sensual, split in half. And then she paints a tiny wasp beside the leaf. And she tells Parvati that her husband's going to get the picture, that a fig requires a special wasp to fertilize the flower deep inside. So at which point Parvati answers her and says, oh, it's always on the days you've done my henna, Samir can't stay away from my bed. So you see, her henna is extremely powerful.
We also see that she's suspicious because she says this kind of leaf only grows in Turkey and not here in India. And how do you know about it?
Yeah. Everybody wants to know about her background. They want to know, why does she know so much? And also they want to know, why does she have eyes that are blue-green when everybody else there has black irises, right? So yeah, they want to know a lot about her. They're curious about her, and they speculate a lot. Just in a little background about Henna, what was interesting is that, Henna was used all over. But I guess the Berbers in North Africa used it. And I thought about this because they said they used the word sympathetic magic, that those symbols of henna could take the place and power of the actual thing. So just like the Egyptians would carve a cobra into stone to protect the tomb of a person, so she would go ahead and do her henna, and she would therefore, when Kanta was trying to conceive, or when she was already pregnant and wanted a safe delivery, whatever, she would take her henna and she painted pictures, if you remember, of babies sleeping and babies doing different things. It was this idea that there was something very magical about the henna. So speaking about magical, what was the story with her house? Why was this house so meaningful to her? Well, on an obvious level, why was it so meaningful?
Well, it was a symbol of the fact that she had been successful and that she was successful.
It was the physical embodiment of her success, her independence. What else?
The mosaics on the floor.
Pardon?
The mosaics on the floor.
The mosaic floor, absolutely. The mosaic floor. What else? She loved it. It was her henna design. Only she knew what it meant. And, yeah. What else?
The bathroom, the privy.
Yeah. She was going to have running water. She was going to have a ceiling fan. She was going to have an herbal garden, right? She just was all excited with this house. But what was the most important thing about this house, do you think?
That she could pay for it.
Well, yes, for sure that. And she was having difficulties all along, having to pay that builder who was awful. Right. What else?
She would have a place for her mother and father.
Oh, that's exactly right. That really moved me. That house, that was so important. She would one day be able to have her parents come, and they would see, and it would justify why she left. And it would be the proof of it was justification of what she did. And she could actually picture the good food she would give her father. She could picture the settee where her mother would recline and rest on the silk cushions she would one day provide them. The house would justify her act of running away, deserting her husband and her family. So the heartbreak was, of course, what?
That never happened. And when she described that, when I read that, I knew it was never going to happen.
Never going to happen. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So now Lakshmi has her sister arrive. She's building this house. She's at the top of her game. All of a sudden, Radha comes. How does she feel when Radha comes?
Mixed feelings.
Mixed feelings.
Mixed feelings.
What else? What kind of mixed feelings?
Well, she was happy that she had some family, because when you ask what are the themes of this book, I think family or lack of family is certainly one of the themes.
Exactly. Right.
So now she has
on the one hand, but what else?
She's trouble. I mean, she's trouble.
She's trouble. She's called the bad luck girl, right? Bad luck girl. But what else does she feel when she looks at her?
It reminds her of where she came from, and although her sister is very, very bright, it comes to be, she's very much part of the cast of where she was brought up. I mean, if I could use the word ignorant from her point of view.
Yes.
And she's quite appalled by the things that she knows she has to teach her, and that becomes a very strong determination on her part.
Yeah, she realizes she's really got to teach this kid, right? And she does a whole bunch of rules for her and really tries.
Not always in a nice way.
Not always in a nice way, right? Well, she doesn't know how to do this, right? She doesn't know how to really be a parent at that point. But the other thing that she feels when she looks at her is this guilt tremendous guilt and tremendous pain, because don't forget, it's Radha who brings her the news, the terrible news. The father died 8 months ago, drunk, drowned, right? And the mother died 2 months ago, and their reputations were ruined and everything was awful. Who had caused that, of course, was Lakshmi, who deserted the husband, and everything else went downhill for them from that point. So she also learns at that point that her mother-in-law has passed away. And of course, she's heartbroken from that as well. This was the woman who showed her how to harvest the flowers that could regulate menses, how to grind snakeweed to soothe the blister without burning the skin. And it was her mother-in-law's teachings that enabled her to survive. And that became her life's work. And of course, she's mourning those losses. She's feeling great guilt, all of that rolled into one. So Radha is known as the bad luck girl because obviously a lot of bad things happened around her. And, everyone was so superstitious in their small village that if she walked by a cow and the cow's milk wasn't sweet, it was her fault. The bad luck girl. Exactly. Yes. So she comes, and when she first comes, we know that she's used to walking barefoot. She doesn't know how to wear shoes. She's very helpful. She's cooking snacks, right, to feed these ladies. But it's tough. It's tough having her, right? As this, there's a lot to teach her. And we find out that Radha, how would you describe her? What are some adjectives? Throw out some adjectives. How would we describe her in the beginning when she first comes?
Rebellious.
Rebellious, naive.
Strong-willed, stubborn.
Very strong-willed, all of that, exactly. Now, all of a sudden, and I'm laughing because when we talk about, is she a realistic character? She's 13. She wants to go to the palace because now, remember, Lakshmi gets this gig at the palace with the Maharani, and she wants to go to the palace, and Lakshmi doesn't really trust her and says no to her. So does she just accept that no very gracefully?
No.
And I was laughing. I think that's probably one of the most realistic things in the book. She's really angry and she's really lashes out, and she doesn't forget that.
Typical teenager.
A typical teenager. And then slowly we see her changing. How is she changing? What do we see happening to Radha? She's changing. What?
She sees this boy. She sees this boy when they went to this party.
Yeah.
And then she feels she falls in love with him.
Yeah.
Oh,
and what's changing is
Jillian, she was spending time with Kanta and watching movies and seeing love stories, reading books that she never had. It was opening her eyes up, and she changed after that.
Exactly. Well, and so she's not even excited. One of the gifts that the Maharani gives to Lakshmi, she says, listen, I know you've got your sister with you. I'm going to let her come to my school for free tuition. I'm going to take care of everything. What an honor. What a wonderful opportunity. And what does she say? She's not interested, but she goes, but she's very unhappy there. And she's becoming physically very beautiful. Right? She's now cleaned up and she's got these gorgeous eyes and she's wearing pretty saris and she's becoming more sophisticated. And a lot, Jillian, as you point out, it's totally also because of the influence of the Western movies that she's seeing and the books that she's reading. And of course, she's got a secret. And what's the secret?
She's pregnant.
She's pregnant.
Now, she doesn't even know that perhaps at the time, but what she does know is that she's having an affair with whom?
Ravi.
And of course, what's the horrible irony here? While she's having this little secret affair with Ravi, the 17-year-old teenager, what's Lakshmi trying to do?
Arrange
the marriage with this wonderful business opportunity. So you see where we've got some cross purposes going on here. Lakshmi strikes me as, when you talk about why was their relationship so complicated between Lakshmi and her sister Radha, what I think it came down to is that when she came, Radha, she was so pathetic, a little orphan. She was, they kicked her out of the house when her mother died because it was it was supposed to be owned by the school teacher. Her father had died. They let the mother stay there. Now the mother dies. They kick her out. She has nowhere to go. She finds out about this sister. And later in the novel, she says, I met you, Lakshmi, and I loved you at first sight. So here's this child who is really looking for love, and she finds Lakshmi, and Lakshmi's interest is elsewhere, right? She's building her business. She's trying to do her thing. By the way, Jillian, you touched on Kanta. I think it's important to talk about her. What made Kanta an interesting character? She's quite different, isn't she? What's different about Kanta?
She
Very
was
Very
British.
modern. She wears capris, has an exposed midriff. What else about her? Judy, did you have something?
She married for love.
Ah,
It was
she
a
marries
love
for
match.
love. She marries for love. And so that's a whole other thing. And so now all of a sudden, this is all the kind of thing that Radha is seeing. And most of all, what Kanta is doing is Kanta in the beginning is childless. And she makes a point of saying she was very separated from other women because the one thing they all have in common is that they have their children, and she felt very separated. So she was lonely. So she takes in Radha, and she's excited to have Radha. And then when she's pregnant, she's even more happy to have her as a companion, right? Unfortunately, she's treating this 13-year-old girl as if she was a contemporary.
A woman.
And right, exactly. And she is not, it's certainly not that. So now we've got Lakshmi finding out that Radha is pregnant. What's her reaction?
She's enraged because she thinks of her ex-husband who's made her pregnant.
Yeah, at first she's angry beyond words because she thinks either she was raped or that Hari had impregnated her. And then how does she feel when she finds out the truth?
She was
Yikes. Horrified. Horrified.
Horrified.
And of course, all she wants to do is give her root bark tea, which will end the pregnancy. But of course, Radha will not consent to that. And so she comes up with some solutions. And of course, what are her solutions? What's one of her solutions?
The adoption from
of the Maharani.
Maharani.
By the way, I did look that up, and it's interesting that there was, I don't know if it was one or more, but that idea of adoption of a crown prince was something that did actually happen. Maybe it happened more than the one time I read about. But yeah, they were looking for an adoptee for the crown prince. And she thinks, okay, this child is going to fit the bill. So that's one wonderful solution that she has. She's a good problem solver, Lakshmi, right? Okay, now there's only one problem with that. And what's that one problem?
Has to be a boy.
Well, it has to be a boy. What else?
Radha doesn't want it.
And Radha has to agree.
And Radha has to give up that baby. She has to agree. And what's happening now? The baby's born and agree. Originally, she agreed to the adoption. Now the baby's born. Can I see the baby? Can I hold the baby? They relent. And of course, what ultimately happens? What's the solution they come up with?
They give it to Kanta.
Kanta loses her baby.
Kanta.
And right. How many of you, by the way, predicted that was going to happen? Yes. Okay. As soon as you found out that Kanta lost her baby, you realized where this was going to go. Okay. So, I want to move on and talk a little bit about Parvati Singh because she's an interesting character. What do we know about Parvati, Samir's wife? She's Ravi's mother. She is Samir's wife. What do we know about her? Well, she's a handsome woman.
Focal point of all the women. She's, she needs to approve everything.
She's a powerhouse. Yeah.
Leader.
The real social connector, right? She really is. Yeah.
She can make you or break you.
Make you
Exactly.
or break you.
Controlling. Controlling and jealous.
Yes. And she comes from the ruling class, by the way. So that's the good thing. That's why they think maybe the Maharani will say yes to the adoption, which of course they do. So we know that she also really likes having her henna done by Lakshmi. She enjoys her as a confidant, but she enjoys something else also about the way she feels about Lakshmi. What's that?
Mm.
She loves feeling superior to her. Remember that? She would sometimes give her a little, Grisha, a little goading here or there, needle her a little bit here and there. But Lakshmi always put up with it. Why?
She
Why?
Parvati was the key
wanted
to
yeah,
success.
money and
She was
She was
wanted
in
the
debt.
for success. Exactly. So what's interesting, I love this because Lakshmi has learned well one of the Indian proverbs. I didn't even know that this was an Indian proverb. It's probably a proverb from every language, but it goes, only a fool lives in water and remains an enemy of the crocodile. She realizes she's got a crocodile in her midst and she is going to be a friend to this crocodile. And that is all going well. She's now negotiating this marriage, right? She's got everything going really great. And then what happens that changes Parvati's whole attitude towards Lakshmi? And what is it, of course? What are the things that happen?
she
One,
sees
She finds
see-
out that her husband slept with her.
okay,
No.
she finds out for
She
sure.
doesn't know that yet.
She doesn't, okay,
No.
that time-wise, she doesn't know that, but Leslie,
She
what
knows that
does
they were
happen
together.
is all along she is suspicious.
Yeah.
Why is she suspicious? What does she see between Samir and Lakshmi? A wonderful friendship.
She
connect-
sees a very strong friendship, but she also sees things that are truly suspicious. When she sees her with money that he's just given to her at his office.
The watch.
The pocket watch, for sure,
Yeah.
right? All of that. Okay, good. So she has reason to worry about that relationship. She doesn't like that relationship. And also, of course, this whole thing with Ravi has come up. So now everything is flipped on its side. And so just the way she made her success, now she is fueling those rumors that she is stealing, right? And she's fueling those rumors. And we see that Lakshmi, of course, is on a downhill slide at this point. She's got lotions and oils that no one will use because people are canceling right and left on her. She's got an unfinished house and she's sunk so low. That was a very painful scene. Do you remember that scene where the oil vendor, she owes him money. He says,
Yes.
well, come put henna on my wife. And she comes to the house and he says he wants her to put it on her breasts. And he wants to sit and watch, and she realizes what's happening and runs off. But you get the feeling of how low she's fallen. But now an interesting thing happens, and this is my question to you. Parvati comes back to her, and Parvati now wants to offer her more than the commission would have been, right, on the marriage. And Parvati comes back and says to her, okay, I'm going to tell everybody that those rumors aren't true. It was all a big mistake. Why does Parvati come back?
She misses her.
She misses her. Okay, she misses her henna. She agrees that there's no one going to ever do hands like that. What else? Were you surprised that Parvati came back? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Control.
Control. Okay, so
Yes, that's right. Control.
it's control. I think it's control, but there's another piece to it too, because what's the deal she offers? I'm going to do all this for you, give you the money, and I'm going to tell everybody it was build back your reputation. But the deal is you have to promise you will stay away from Samir, right? That's her deal, because that's the one thing that she's most fearful of, is that something's going to happen with, with Samir. Okay. The men in the story are interesting, and I want to just check our timing. We're doing fine. Okay. So Samir, he's an interesting character. What do we know about Samir?
Likes the women.
He really is a flirt. We know that he has Lakshmi tells him he's a really lucky man. He's got a wife waiting in the bedroom. That's Parvati, and the freedom outside of it. So he is a lucky man, I guess, right? Okay. What else do we know about him?
I think he cares about her, Lakshmi.
Yeah, what did you make of that relationship between them? He definitely cares about her. They don't sleep together in the beginning, certainly. So it's a wonderful friendship. What else?
They would spar. They had these things going on between them, quotes.
Proverbs back and forth. He was educated at Oxford, right? And so he knew a lot. And by the way, he really epitomized that struggle to find balance, didn't he, between modern, I think, England, British, and modern versus a traditional. Indian. He wore the English tailored suits, but in other ways, he was very, very Indian. What else do we want to say about him? What else do we want to say about him? Go ahead and mute yourself if you've got something else going on, please. Okay, guys? Okay, yeah.
He's has a lot of influence in the community.
Yes, he's the one who goes to the Maharani and arranges for that potential adoption. What else? He's a very handsome guy.
Right.
What I was struck by was that there was all the time sexual tension between them, right? And at one point he says to her, "I've already got a wife." Because he was sort of had all these dalliances with widows. He liked lonely young widows because, by the way, that was also a cultural thing. Widows did not remarry. Did you notice that in the book? Widowers did, but widows, he liked widows because they were just lonely and they were just destined to remain lonely. So he liked widows. But he doesn't really try to sleep with her at any point because they just have this very warm friendship. Okay. And then all of a sudden things change. Again, an arc of change. Where's the change here and why? What's the change in their relationship? Obviously. Okay, guys, you gotta raise your hand. Yeah.
He lends her money.
He gives her money. Yeah, he totally bails her out with the builder, 100%. Yeah. What else?
I think it changed when the son made Radha pregnant. That's
exactly when she confronts him about Ravi. Yeah, and actually, she sleeps with him on that occasion. Do you remember that scene? She's lying down in the mistress's bedroom, upstairs guest bedroom. He comes up there. They end up sleeping together. And then afterwards, she ends up telling him about Ravi. And what's his reaction? I agree with you, Stephanie. I think that's the turning point.
It was typical. He said, how do you know it's my son? First thing he said is, how do you know it's my son?
Okay, could have been a little bit of that, but what else? What's his reaction to the whole conversation? What's he worried about? Jackie, did you want to say something?
Well, I was actually going to add into that, but that's not quite what you were asking. I absolutely loved when the mistress went to Parvati and was so upset that somebody had slept with him in her house when she was sleeping with him. And I thought that was actually
right. That funny but sad twist. Imagine my humiliation when his mistress is upset that he's cheating on her. Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think Shamir saw himself in his son because he played the same role from young man on.
That's exactly right. I think so too. And you know what? That's the thing that turns her off the most, because all of a sudden, what happens to the way she feels about him? She realizes that she never really knew him, because she realizes that Ravi is going to grow up to be Samir. Exactly. And the other thing that really hurts her, and really she can't get over, is what else? Do you remember this? His reaction. She realizes he was not that surprised. Why?
Because he knew.
Jillian? Yeah.
Because the other girl who used to work for her, she was pregnant also, and she was sent away, so they knew. And that would have been a good solution for the adoption for the baby. So I was hoping that would have worked out.
Oh, that's interesting. Right, right. But that was the saddest thing with Lala, right? This Lala, remember, there was the servant and her niece, the 15-year-old girl, was let go immediately. And it's interesting because she says at one point, Lakshmi says, gee, I wonder what she could have done that displeased Parvati so much. Well, here's what it was. She got pregnant. And so what really distressed her, Lakshmi, when she's looking at Samir that day in the bedroom, and she says to him, you knew about Lala. And and what do? What are you worried about? He's worried about Ravi. He doesn't want anything to ruin Ravi's reputation. He's so happy. He can't wait to ship him back to Eton, to his private school. And he doesn't care about Radha. And all he wants to do is get rid of this baby. Right? And he's only worried about his own exposure at the Jaipur club that he belongs to. He doesn't really care about anything except for these most superficial things. And she sees him in a totally different light. Any more comments about, yeah, Marilyn?
Lynda, the Good Old Boys Club is in every country.
Yeah.
I mean, this is India, but it could be anywhere.
That's exactly right. That's right. You know, I felt that way also. The idea of how Radha got pregnant, the idea that it was such a confluence of events. This was this child who, you know, had no parental supervision, came really literally looking for love. And, you know, really was sort of, no one was really paying attention to her other than Kanta, who was giving her the wrong type of attention. And so it was a confluence of events that really led to the whole problem with her. I thought that Samir was sort of an interesting character in contrast to Hari, who's the ex-husband. Because why? What happens to Hari? When we first meet Hari, what do we know about him? Jillian, yeah.
Well, he had a whole change. He was an abusive, disgusting man. And then he started helping the girls, and she didn't think he really was helping everyone, but she found out that he had changed. And
he really did.
And with Samir, we saw he was very good and kind to her. And then all of a sudden, he also turned on her. Like he had a different reversal.
Yeah, people change, you know. Samir changes in her eyes, and then all of a sudden Hari amazingly changes. Jackie, you had something to add?
Well, I think going exactly along with what Jillian's saying too is I hate cliches, but it really is don't judge a book by its cover, because the one she respected the most and thought the most of really wasn't who she thought he was. And Hari changed so much and became such a great guy at the end.
To what do we attribute that change? Why does Hari change?
I think he also worked with his own mother, and his mother taught him. So there was, she was able to, and then because of that, he's sort of, I think he had some insight into his own behavior.
Yeah.
As he worked with women.
It's interesting because he all of a sudden saw, when he was helping his mother, he was seeing the pain that is inflicted on these women, and he's really trying to help them. Yeah. And she feels at the end, she thinks, well, if she's changed, Lakshmi's changed, maybe he changed as well, right? The other character that changes a great deal in the arc of the story is who? Is Malik. How do we see him change? He goes from what to what?
From a child to a, I had a hard time understanding that he was 7 or 8 years old at the beginning. Yeah. He was far too wise and had a lot of common sense and a lot of street sense.
Yeah.
Even though he was 7 or 8 years old,
yeah.
He grew tremendously through the story.
Tremendously.
He went from a child to a loyal friend, although at a young age.
Right.
He was also an entrepreneur.
He became, so he's so loyal to her. He becomes this entrepreneur. Yeah, Stephanie, what?
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
No, I think he was always who he was. He was little and young, but he, first of all, she accepted him. And I think that for him was like having a stable person in his life. And he became, so he had the qualities. He had loyalty. He was, he had ingenuity. He was able to make deals.
He really could.
He was a street mentor. I didn't see the change as much as growing up a little bit,
Growing up.
He was always loyal. He was always amazingly loyal to her.
Well, maybe it was he was given more of an opportunity to show a lot of those different things than changing. That's an interesting look at it. I loved the part at the end where all of a sudden we find out that he is the one who strikes the deal, where he gets things cheaper for the chef, the Maharani's chef. The chef pockets the money. The that he saves. And then the chef influences the Maharani to fund the Hari's do-gooding with the pleasure girls, right? So it's all Malik who kind of really makes this all happen. And you should know, I kind of read ahead that ending. I don't know if you saw that with her next book, the beginning of her next book, at the end of the book. Malik is going to end up being a central character. The author really liked Malik. And so you're going to see her again in the next book. Dr. Kumar, I really liked him. What'd you think about him? And how would you describe him? What's his role?
Well,
Kathy?
he saves her at the end. He kind of saves her at the end.
He saves her at the end. He does,
good
yeah.
opportunity to remake a career, a new career.
Right. Kathy, you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay.
I just was impressed with how open-minded he really was. You know, he was at first very, very condemning, really, of Lakshmi's methods and her medicine, her approach to medicine, but he really accepted that.
Right. So he again is the embodiment of this idea of, he's caught in this struggle between medicine and alternative medicine, you know, and certainly that's really a kind of new thing for him at that point. Yeah. I saw a whole lot of people starting to raise hands. No? Yeah. Any other comments about Dr. Kumar? Yeah, Jackie?
I was just going to say, I didn't think he was so much condemning as he was very skeptical. Because even in the very beginning, he was skeptical. He didn't necessarily condemn it. He just watched and saw. So anyway, I just thought it's a different side of that.
Yeah. Okay, good. Condemning.
But he was also
condemning versus not. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought he was very kind. And I thought that he's her savior at the end.
Yeah.
But I think he also loves her. And I think that's when I finished the book, which was this morning, I thought that they're going to be together.
Yeah,
that was my
it leaves you
feeling.
with that feeling. I saw him in much the same way you all saw him. He was to me a rescuer. He rescues Joyce, the English woman. He helps rescue her at the end, along, of course, with the sachets that the medicine or whatever, the healing pieces that she adds, Lakshmi, but he rescues her. He rescues all these people that he works with, the indigenous people in the clinic in Shimla. And of course, we know he's going to now rescue Lakshmi at the end. He's going to provide her with her healing garden. But also at the end, what did you make of the idea that she turns to him because now he's got to rescue one more situation?
The adoption.
He's got to get that baby out of the hands of the palace. And so he ends up writing.
And would he have done that if he weren't so attracted to her? Because he took a risk. He's, changing records and dealing with the palace. And that's a big risk for him.
Yeah. And he says to her, well, why should I do this or something at one point? And what does she answer him? Because it's the proper thing to do. So yeah, he does. He takes a very big risk and he does it. So he even rescues them out of that situation.
And also, he had been with Radha right through the pregnancy, through the bulk of the pregnancy. Right. And I think what he had experienced the fact that she had grown attached to what was, the baby growing inside her. So yeah. I think he also had that side and he was a very sensitive person.
He knew that he was there when Kanta lost the baby. He took care of Radha during the pregnancy, as you say. So he was very personally involved in their lives. Yeah, it was more than just, he was very personally involved with them. I think that, and I think it was interesting that he took the risk, but on the other hand, I guess I understood why he did it. I think it was in his nature to understand too, what would have been this child's life in the palace? She makes the point of saying, he would have been raised without love. He was, and in worse than that, the Maharani herself might have resented him all those years, right? Because it should have been her son, her natural son, who should have been the Maharaja.
He also tried to always step in his letters to tell her that she didn't want to leave. She wasn't going to give up the baby. So he knew ahead of time that that was going to
He
happen.
did. He was already sort of, maybe he was already reconciled to it. Yeah, it's hard to know, but he was very aware of that. He tried to warn her. So
what finally made Radha give up the baby and leave the baby totally in another city?
Okay, what made her decide to leave Jaipur and go to Shimla when ultimately Lakshmi makes the decision to go to Shimla? Why did she join her sister?
I know she was having trouble with Kanta and that wasn't working out, but why didn't she just take the baby with her?
I think she felt guilty about the feelings that she had toward Kanta when she knew that Kanta had been so good to her. And now she has these hateful feelings about the way Kanta is taking care of the baby, her baby. But maybe she also is maturing enough to realize that she's really too young to be a mother and it's time for her to move on.
Any other thoughts on that? Okay. I think that I think it is a combination of all those factors, perhaps. Yeah, I think she realizes it's the best thing for the baby. It's certainly the best thing for Kanta, who was now second guessing herself in terms of even her ability to be a mother. And I think she realized for herself too that, you know, there was school to attend to and you know, that she had a lot of growing up to do. What about Lakshmi? What does she come to realize finally at the end? What does she come to realize? Well, how does she change?
It's not, it's,
What?
it's not just things in her life, possessions, there are other things to life other than
Yeah.
what she was hoping for.
She had been so focused on things, right? On her house and focused on all of that. And she realizes really that house had been not really, I love the fact that she realized that the house had been a source of anxiety and debt for her and sleepless nights for her. She finally comes to realize that. By the way, that's the other thing about Malik. He's the one who says to her, he's the first one that says to her, you really should leave here.
Right.
This kid had a lot of common sense for a young kid. He realizes this house has brought you nothing but aggravation and you should leave.
And I think also that as she's leaving with Malik and the parrot and
Yeah.
you know, she said she recognized that this is in fact her family.
That this is her family, right? That this is now her family. The other change that, yeah, Jillian?
She realized she had to start over and she had to leave her current situation because once her name was doubted, there was no turning back. And she really enjoyed helping people with the herbs more so than the henna. She felt below herself doing the henna on people. And so I think she realized she had to start over and this was a new beginning and to help people. And that would be more rewarding than making money for a house.
She even makes the point in there, Jillian, for what you're saying, is that she realizes that she uses the line, up till then she'd been making people feel good. Now she was really going to make them better. She was going to work alongside the doctor and she was going to make them better. And these were people who really wanted her help, needed her help. And she was very happy about that. The other thing I thought was very interesting is that at the end, whereas she had been focused on making money, she had made very light of the whole idea of men's infidelity. And now she's realizing she thought of all of those discarded pregnancies, all of those sachets that she was lightly giving out. And each one of them that she sold was maybe for another coat of plaster in her house or another piece of, you know, section of the terrazzo. And now she's thinking about those pregnancies that she discarded. And she's all of a sudden having a whole different feeling, disgusted by Samir, and in many ways disgusted with the way she had looked at all of that so lightly and with the wrong focus. Anything else you want to add as far as the ending of the story? Did you like that ending? I thought it was even, yeah, I liked even the fact that Hari shows up at the train station and he's wearing a clean white shirt and he's clean shaven and he actually looks handsome. And she realizes, you know, she's even able to look at her next chapter, not as if she's running away from someone or something, but rather she's moving forward to something in a very positive way. I love the line. She says she had said goodbye to the house, left behind 100,000 henna strokes. She had healed and soothed so many, but no more a henna artist. She's leaving behind her desire to rewrite the past, and she's now looking forward to a wonderful future. So, yeah, go ahead. Did you have something you wanted to add, Bonnie? Bonnie, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Okay. Yes, I really I loved the book. And the ending I thought was great too, because I think in the end she came to realize that family by the traditional definition might not be the family for all of us. She looked out the window and saw that she's finally home. She's finally found her family. Her family is what it is. So, I thought it was really, really a great book and a great ending.
Right. It's beautiful. Yeah. Leslie, you had something? You have to unmute, Leslie.
I think the character studies in this book are amazing. When you think of all that we learned about her changes and what inspired her and what influenced her, just amazing. And all of the characters, actually, you see the changes in them. I think the author did an amazing job, for her first book.
Yeah.
And I also just wanted to say that my grandson, who's half Chinese and half Jewish, is an artist, and he's started his first year in art school in Maryland, and he has done henna painting. He's done that at different events. I'll have to tell him to read the book.
Right, very nice. Good. Okay, well, we'll look forward to seeing you with henna hands at some point, Leslie. Yeah. So what struck you now? Let's do, if we have a few extra minutes, just to talk for a minute about some of the themes. The theme of freedom was very, very important to this author. And in what ways did the characters have freedom or a lack of freedom? Obviously, there were certain things that were more obvious than others, but what else is she saying about freedom through these characters?
Well, maybe it's as simple as freedom is in the eye of the beholder.
Okay.
Some people seem really free, but they aren't. They aren't free. They're controlled. They're controlled by their husbands. They're controlled by society.
Okay, so that is exactly, Kathy, what I was thinking. All those women from the higher upper castes are very controlled, not only by their husbands, but by
the society.
other, by Parvatis, all the Parvatis of the world, right? Yep. They're being judged and measured, and their freedom is restricted. What else?
I found it really interesting that she got her freedom from selling the house and who she sold it to, and she left the watch, and that was sort of like the last bit of freedom, the house, the whole thing, anything that was attached to her, her past, and she was going forward. And who bought the house?
Oh, Nancy, thank you. What a good point that is. That's so true. Wasn't that an amazing thing that, right, Parvati ends up buying the house. She loved that henna, loved that floor. And again, wanted a piece of her, interestingly enough, right? It was a kind of a crazy thing. Yeah.
And Parvati shares something with her about Samir. She shares with her that Samir has a big ego and needs comforting and compliments all the time. And so in a way, she knew how to control Samir a little bit.
Right.
And to put
by
up
the way,
with
she
what he's
also,
doing.
following up on that, Sandy, she also sort of lets Parvati know. Parvati's trying to make her the deal, like, I'll do this for you, I'll do that for you, just don't see Samir again. And I forget exactly what the words were, but she says to her, okay, I'm not doing that deal. If I was going to make any deal, my deal would be, I wouldn't tell everybody how many bastards I have prevented from your husband, so she really lets her know that she really knows it all. She knows it all. So the other, I know what else I wanted to mention to you. The freedom, by the way, how about that whole scene with the Maharani? I found that very interesting. And there is a line in there where she realizes that the Maharani, the elder Maharani, they don't have any freedom in there. They're locked in their own prison. That palace is a prison for them. Remember, the elder Maharani, she has a sanctuary of what? Her flowers.
And her
Remember that?
bird.
And her bird and her flowers, and she's got her own little prison in there. So you see where even their freedom is so limited. I thought that was an interesting piece too. Where else did you see the struggle between the idea of India at that time, the struggle between the balance of modernity versus tradition? Anything else?
I think probably that even though India was separated from Britain and the Raj, that there were not major changes there either. Everything is evolutionary. Nothing happens quickly, whether it was in the personal life of the characters in this book or the country dealing, at the national level. It's not quick, and nothing really changes very quickly. So
yeah,
that's just the way it is. You get freedom, but do you really get freedom?
Yeah, right. There's always going to be some limitations somewhere.
The irony for me was that Lakshmi was the only female that was really free in this book, because the others, as you said, were so controlled. And yet she was the one who was lower caste or lower
looked down upon.
Yeah, she didn't have the same status as these women, but she had the freedom.
Yeah, it's interesting.
With that.
The other thing,
I think that Lakshmi is going to bridge that gap between modern medicine and the old medicine when she goes there, and that gives her a lot of freedom too.
At one point, Dr. Kumar makes that point to her. He really wants her to come for that very purpose, to teach him also, as well as to help the patients, but also to learn. He wants her to study the soil conditions. What are their indigenous plants? How can those plants be used? Yeah, so she's really going to bridge that gap. In terms of the issues that might have been in the crossfire between modernity and tradition, I thought the whole thing about contraception was interesting. Having children, the idea of the freedom to have children versus, not allowing contraception. I think that was something that's going to be in the crossfires there in the 50s there. Also, the whole idea of women as possessions of their husbands, that was a big thing that I saw there. The whole idea of arranged marriages versus love marriages. Any other thoughts on that? Any other thoughts on anything that we haven't covered in the book? Anybody have any questions or comments?
I have one comment. It's related to the book in a way. And it's a TV series on Acorn. And it's called The Good Karma Hospital.
Oh.
It's in modern times, but it's such a beautiful, beautiful series, because it gives you an idea of how many different types of people there are, the caste system. This is a small rural hospital, and all the people they have to serve, and the superstitions, so many things from this book I can relate to the characters in that series. I really recommend it. It's on Acorn, so you have to subscribe to Acorn, but
the Good Karma Hospital?
Good Karma Hospital, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, it's always great to get a good recommendation like that in a series. Yeah, Jillian?
So not a show, but someone had recommended this book to me before I read this, the Henna Artist. It's called The Henna House.
Oh.
And it's actually all about Yemen. And it's in the 1920s in Yemen. And it's also about arranged marriages and henna artists, and how henna artists are treated as a lower class type of person. So it was just interesting. I never really read much about henna or knew much about it, except for that it's done before a Sephardic, a Jewish wedding ceremony is where they put henna on the bride.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to read you something which I right now cannot find in my notes, but it was really beautiful. The idea of women. Okay, this was one of the articles on henna. Women usually use henna when they are at a threshold of something in their lives. But what makes it interesting is it's also the time in which they would want to be surrounded by other people. They would want the bonding with other people. And sometimes there's something about the actual rubbing and touching of people. The idea of trusting your body to somebody else, which is all part of the henna magic. The idea that it's not surprising. It would be something you would want to do, have henna done before a marriage or before some kind of a threshold event. It was kind of an interesting thing about henna. Yeah. Any other comments? Great. Well, I'm delighted that we've all been together, and we really enjoyed all of your comments today. Thank you so much for all the participation. I think it made it a really good discussion today. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you. It's going to be now, instead of 4 weeks, I guess we're going to be 5 weeks. Give you a nice long time to read Pride and Prejudice. But I think you're going to really enjoy it. Okay.
I just want to compliment you, Lynda, as always, for really leading that conversation. But I have to say, yay, everybody.
Yay, everybody. Yay, everybody.
Where we started. And
it was great.
It's really wonderful. And we look forward to seeing you on April 26th for Pride and Prejudice. And registration is open for that and the May program. So you can go ahead and do that. And again, Stirling Road Library for this partnership, because it's really a wonderful partnership.
Eva, did you have something? Was your hand
No,
up?
I just
okay,
wanted to say this is my first experience with you, and I can't wait for the next one.
Oh, great. Well, we're so glad to see you on board here. So that's great. Okay, great to see everybody. Be well, and we'll see you in 5 weeks. Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Lynda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.